Welcome to the B2B Category Creators Podcast, hosted by Gil Alouche, founder and CEO of Metadata.io. This podcast is all about sharing the real and sometimes edgy secrets of B2B software creation. On today's episode, we have Udi Ledergor, CMO at Gong, and Elissa Fink, board advisor and former CMO of Tableau.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of B2B Category Creators. I'm guest hosting today. My name is Jason Widup. I'm VP of Marketing at Metadata.io. Guest hosting for our CEO, Gil Alouche. Today, I'm incredibly excited. I've got two really marketing powerhouses on the program today. One I actually had the opportunity to work with. So first, I'd like to introduce Elisa Fink. Elisa is currently a board member at several companies, but most well known for being the CMO at Tableau from, I think it was 2007 to 2018 when I was there. Growing that from 5 million to $1 billion. I also got to work for Elisa for the last year, I think, of your tenure there. And it was just a great experience for me. So Elisa, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Jason. It's such a pleasure to be here and to see you and to talk with you. Yeah, we had fun together, didn't we? Did some great stuff, and so it's a total pleasure. Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, as you said, I was at Tableau from about 5 million in revenue to over $1 billion in rev. I left right before the Salesforce.com acquisition, which I'm really happy about. Didn't get trapped in that. Not that but it would have delayed my retirement. And I have to say, I love being retired. Yeah. And I call it semi-retirement because, as I joke, I'm old enough to be retired, but too old for Denny's at 4 o'clock. So I'm serving on a few boards, doing a little advising and doing a little teaching at University of Washington, and it's been really fun. So awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. And also we've got Udi Ledergor, who is the CMO of Gong for about the past 4 years, VPs of marketing at other kind of technology companies before there. Udi, I've followed you for a while. I really, really love what you guys are doing at Gong from a marketing perspective. I also love the product. And I really love the little that I know about what you do and what you value in your personal life. And so I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Gong too, in case there's somebody out there that doesn't know what
Sure.
Gong is.
Thanks, Jason. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Udi. As you said, I've been with Gong for a little over 4 years now. I was the first marketer at Gong. This is the 5th time I've built a marketing team from scratch. And the 3rd time I've worked with my CEO, Amit Bendov. So for the past 22 years, we've been chasing each other across 3 different companies on and off. So yeah, I could probably give you a good run for your age, Elisa. We were not teenagers when we started. So that is the short version of my career. I have been living in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, for the last 2 years. And prior to that, I was born and raised and spent most of my working years in Tel Aviv, Israel. So I've got that perspective. Even at Gong, I've worked for Gong 2 years out of the Israel office and 2 years out of the San Francisco office, making it a unique perspective. And really, really glad to be here today.
Oh, you got a little pooch back there.
Yeah.
There's mine.
He's our COVID dog, so to speak. We arranged for him before COVID, but he arrived the night before, so it was just some time to be a pest. But anyway, yeah, nice. Where's your doggy? Let me see.
Maggie's keeping an eye on me over here. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All I can offer to this discussion is the bearded lizard, the bearded dragon that I have.
That looks like an aquarium back there. So that's cool. Look at that.
This is a litter, the bearded dragon.
A little higher.
Nice.
Let's see. Oh my God, so cool. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Say hi, Glitter.
My husband would be jealous. He wants another. We have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and he wants another pet. And I'm like, no more mammals. And then that was.
These are pretty low key.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to go.
Nice. Do you guys have alcoholic drink with you?
I did. I was waiting for you to ask.
Sweet. All right, great. I almost forgot actually. So
it was nice of Sarah. Thank you for sending that, by the way.
Yeah. It's a little thing that we've been doing. We've only had one person on that doesn't drink. It was Dave Gearhart, but we sent him coffee. And here's what happened. I asked the admin, I was like, hey, he lives in Vermont. I'm like, hey, can you find a little specialty coffee shop, get a nice coffee? Cause I knew he liked coffee. Starbucks shows up at his door. I'm just like, no, Kendria, no. I'm like, so I emailed Dave. I'm like, Dave, I can send lame gifts, but like Starbucks lame. So I'm sorry about that. So yeah, so I'm glad you guys.
Oh, that's funny.
So I've got, it's pink. You can't quite tell, but it's a strawberry habanero scratch margarita that I buy from this bar down the road, and they like marinate the tequila and habanero. They make this like strawberry habanero syrup, and then I just put it together, and it's their simple syrup. Yeah, it's really, really good. So that's what
I
I'll
love spicy drinks like that.
Yeah, me too. My wife got me into it. Udi, what do you got there?
I have a Villa Antinori, just Italian red wine that I opened the bottle for last night for dinner and had about half a glass left. So I'm like, let's knock this down before I open a new one for tonight's dinner.
When I studied in Florence in my junior year of college, I actually studied at the Palazzo Antinori in downtown Florence.
Oh, wow.
The Antinori family that makes the wine. And so like every time I see people drink Antinori, when I see it, I'm like, I gotta drink that because I'm
such a small world. You know, I'm originally from Israel, so we have more access to European wines in Tel Aviv than I can find here at, my supermarket. So I mean, they're great Californian wines, but I do miss some of the classic old world wine making countries.
Awesome. Well, let's start off with a little cheers. We all got a little drink here, so I'll raise a glass. Everybody, thank you. Take a little
cheers. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Cheers.
Yeah, happy holidays. Just a couple days out. So, as everybody knows, we're talking about creating categories in this podcast, and so we're really going to focus on that. We'll probably go off on a couple tangents here and there, but we're really going to focus on the categories. So, to start, just so we kind of know like which categories we're talking about from both of your perspectives, Elisa, why don't you talk a little bit about the category that Tableau ended up in? I don't know how many different ones it went through, but like at the end of your tenure, what category was it in? And maybe just talk a little bit about that category.
Sure. At the end of my tenure, we were in business analytics platforms. When I started, we were considered a data visualization tool. We didn't love that because at the time, data visualization was kind of a sciencey thing, kind of a niche thing. And also it wasn't something that, people had common use for. And so pretty early on, I was like, listen, we need to be in the business intelligence category, but we do it differently. And so it kind of birthed a model for us, which was like, find a category that you belong in, that people budget for, that people recognize the problem, break it. That's what we did. I feel like what we did is we broke the old business intelligence category. We broke in first of all, then we broke it, and then we broke out of it. And we said, it isn't these business intelligence behemoth platforms that, take forever to install. Only specialized people can use them. It's a service model to everybody else, frustrating. It's a different thing. And so for us, it was category breaking and then category reinventing. So we ended up in a platform that Gartner renamed from business intelligence to business analytics. And I think that's true. I think we did sort of help bring that movement forward. So it was a little bit more, it was revolution, but a lot of evolution as well, which, with industry analysts and people out there, sometimes that's what you got to do.
Well, and analytics was really pretty stuffy. You know what I mean? Like, and, I'm thinking back probably to 2006, 7, 8, when it was like, and I don't really even know the players. I just remember I did some consulting and tried to bring in like MicroStrategy, you know what I mean? And like Cognos and like these, and it was just like, there was no fun to it. It was just so stuffy and just like square peg, square hole, that kind of a thing. And Tableau, I feel like was the first one to really like, no, this can be fun. This can be exciting. It doesn't have to be stuffy. This doesn't have to be just for that deep analyst.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what it was. It was a heavy, platformy, installed, months and months to deployment. Don't serve people or specialists that you're working with. Everybody else can get in line and wait for those specialists to do the work. And then you get what you get. And that's the category that we entered into, broke into, and then, like I said, broke it and then broke out of it, and said, hey, no, analytics is for everyone. This should be done differently. This should be fun. This should be powerful. This should be empowering to everybody, not just those precious few. So for us, it was that kind of motion for category creation, so to speak.
Yeah. Udi, let's talk a little bit about your category. So again, Gong. This is an interesting one because, maybe start like Elisa did with the category where, how it's named now. And I don't actually know if it's gone through, I'm assuming it's gone through some iterations. it probably didn't start with where it's at now. But yeah, let's go through that same.
So it's interesting to hear your story, Elisa, on how it happened more as an evolution. I think at Gong, we've been very intentional about our category play. And here's sort of the nutshell version of it. So for the first 3 or 4 years at Gong, we played within the conversation intelligence category that someone had coined that term before we showed up, shortly before we showed up. And, as a very early stage company, the last thing you want to do is take on that heavy lift of creating a category. So many companies, like, they do that and die because it's a very, very heavy lift. We were first like, okay, let's build a product people actually want to use. Then we'll worry about the budgeting part and where we fit in. And the category served us well for the first 3 or so years. And then about 18 months ago, we had increasingly come to the conclusion that we had outgrown the conversation intelligence category and we needed something new. And I can share specifically the 2 challenges that we wanted to solve with the new category were: 1, differentiation. The very basics of conversation intelligence are you can record a call, you can listen back to it, and you can use that for coaching and other things. Now, that part of conversation intelligence was a novelty 4 years ago. It is now almost a commodity. I mean, we're recording this call on Zoom. Conversation intelligence didn't do much more than that 4 years ago. So this is quickly becoming a commodity. And we felt that by associating ourselves with conversation intelligence, we were frequently compared to these niche note-taking tools that's all they did. They recorded a call. And we cringed every time we heard someone put us in the same category as these niche companies, because we already have a product that is so far reaching compared to everything else in the category. And we have a product roadmap that is light years ahead of what anyone in the space is thinking about even today, that we felt that it would become more and more difficult to differentiate ourselves within the conversation intelligence category. But if we were in a different category, we could just say, oh, those are conversation intelligence. That's Gong of 2016. Revenue intelligence is the present and the future. So that was one problem we set out to solve. The second one was, and this one's a little more subtle, we found ourselves in conversations with senior sales leaders who were the only ones who were actually at power to get budget to buy a system like Gong. And when the CRO of a large enterprise heard us describe our category as conversation intelligence, we usually got bumped down to someone like sales enablement or sales ops, because the VP of sales or the CRO doesn't care about conversations. That's a tactical thing for a large sales organization. And we thought if we could only talk about something that the CRO cares about, we could get and keep her attention before getting bumped down to enablement. And to make a long story short, we brought in a very talented woman on my team, Sheena Badani, whose job title is leading our category creation. That's what she does for Gong. And within her first 6 months, she took us through the process, which is kind of similar to a rebranding process that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but it was all about the category creation. And we came up with different options and we weighed them according to different criteria of, how many other companies are already using it and how would people get it, and would this appeal to the senior sales leadership and who else is playing there. And we came up with revenue intelligence, and we launched that just a little over a year ago. So this is still very new. We launched it specifically on October 8th of 2019 at our inaugural industry conference, Celebrate San Francisco. And Amit, our CEO, got on stage and gave his keynote, and the press release went out that day, and the website updated, and all the materials updated, and now we were a revenue intelligence company. And it was a very intentional move. It all happened in one day. And we've been pushing that since then. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that we do to keep growing and maintaining that. But I'll say that so far we've seen some amazing traction, both with the huge enterprise deals that have become Gong customers in the last year, and we've obviously been able to get and keep the attention of the senior sales leaders there. 2, very reputable analysts like Constellation Research just today, the day that we're recording this, they recognized us on their list of best enterprise software, whatever, company of the year. And they talk about it as a revenue intelligence technology. So this is now becoming a thing that the analysts are now using those words. A year ago, nobody was using these words. And now Gartner and Forrester and Constellation and Aragon and other analysts are becoming more and more familiar with our vocabulary, and that's where you want to be when you're creating a category.
That's an amazing story because being able to make that move, and then what CRO doesn't want to talk about revenue?
Right? That's the one thing she cares about. It's in her title.
Exactly.
She's the chief revenue officer.
Have a category people care about, and I agree with you. Conversational intelligence, could be, okay, that's for my sales ops, or that's for training or whatever, but revenue, that's my thing,
Yeah.
But what's interesting too, I was just realizing, like, our category that we were in when I joined was data visualization, small, niche-y kind of category, and we had to get out of it. And in a way, but that's what we could deliver at the time. And in a way, I would say Gong's kind of similar, right? Conversational intelligence is what you were and what you could deliver at the time. But then you realize you can do more, and you can add more value, and you can do bigger things. And I don't know if there's something to realizing that, in a lot of startups, you start off doing one thing really well that's important, and then you try to use that as a footstone or a foundation or a headstone. Oh, not a headstone, but as a starting point to build into your big vision and your big ideas. Because I'm sure you guys always, like us, we always had a big vision for, like, hey, this software is going to change the world. That's really, we really believe that. And I'm sure you guys at Gong think the same thing. And we believed it was way beyond data visualization. And I'm sure you believed from the beginning it was way beyond conversational.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you start somewhere, it's kind of
the story sort of behind Gong is that, when Amit was the CEO of Sisense, so this is a real story, he had a quarter that he describes as a quarter from hell, where sales were going down, forecasts were not being met, and nobody could explain why. And you were looking at all the charts and dashboards, and there was not even a clue to what was going on. And he started listening to a couple of sales calls. And if you've ever done that at a normal speed, you know how excruciating it is. It's horrible. Like, to listen to 1 hour conversation, you have to listen for 1 hour. And when you're done, you only have a data set of one call. How are you going to learn quickly what's happening across a sales team of 100 sellers by listening to a couple of calls? It's just not scalable. And he was thinking there's got to be a better way of quickly gauging customer interactions and understanding what's really going on in my market now, and not just listening to the opinions and excuses of salespeople and their managers. And that's how Gong was born. And Gong was born with the premise of presenting sales leaders and other sales professionals with a true grasp of their customer reality, of what's really happening in all of their customer interactions, so they can make better business decisions on which deals to focus on, which deals are going south, and give them leading indicators on these things, not just the lagging indicators. And so that was the vision from day number one. And the starting point was, well, we need some data from customer interactions. Let's start recording calls. And we did that, and it was an instant success. And people loved the idea of being able to not only listen to a call, but to search for a word and see where it came up, and listen to the call at double speed, and see, just like a table of contents you might get on a book, we can do that to a call now. We can see where the discovery started and ended, where the demo happened, where the pricing was discussed, and where next steps were brought up or not. So that became an instant hit. And on top of that, just like you said, Elisa, we've been building other layers like deal intelligence of, okay, this is useful not only as an individual analysis of one call or helping a specific rep, we can actually rally the whole team around a certain deal that needs help, and get market intelligence on which competitors are coming up more this quarter than last quarter, and understand how our new messaging is landing or how the new pricing is being discussed. So there's so many other layers, but we definitely needed that first killer app, as it's often called, to get that initial market traction and product market fit with.
Udi, you mentioned Sheena. You hired somebody that actually is specializing in it. Did she have that experience from before? Has she done that before? Or like, what's the, because that's not a normal title, you know what I mean? Or a normal role. So like, what's the makeup of that person?
So it's a great question. So Sheena is kind of a mid-stage career marketing executive. Her last role was a VP of marketing at a small startup. And so she's got some traction under her belt. She was looking for her next challenge. And originally she came in to interview for another role, which was our head of product marketing. And we really, really liked her. But for that specific role, we felt that she didn't have enough sort of vertical, deep experience. Product marketing is one of the toughest roles to hire for, as any marketer probably knows. And it's one of the few roles where we really value experience equally or more than potential. And happy to do a separate conversation on how many of the roles I hire for potential rather than experience.
Yes.
And so we really liked her. And then we had another candidate that had more experience. We ended up hiring him for the PMM role. And at this time, we were having those management discussions about a new category creation. And we knew that we needed someone to own this and facilitate this process. Otherwise, it would just fizzle out. And after Amit and I met Sheena, Amit suggested, why don't we hire Sheena to do that? Just offer her the role. And I'm like, that's a great idea. And I pitched her with the idea. She was completely taken off guard because this is not the role she was interviewing for. So she took a few days to think about it. She talked to some of our investors and some of our customers. She did her due diligence and she talked to other mentors. And they told her that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, not only because of the role, but because of the company and the industry that she's joining, and that she could really leave her mark. And I'm thrilled that she took their advice and joined us. So awesome. She's been learning as we go along and teaching us as we go along. And now she works with the industry analysts and with the press. And she launched the Reveal podcast, the Revenue Intelligence podcast. And she just crossed 52,000 downloads of her podcast episode. Something incredible.
That's crazy.
She's rocking it.
I'm excited when we get a couple hundred downloads of our podcast.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to throw shade like that.
It gives me something to shoot for. It gives me something to shoot for. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about the intentionality of it. So Udi, you already said like we went into it intentionally. So Elisa, how about you? So when you first started and you realized, okay, we're in the data viz category, was it an initial focus area? Did you kind of like, or was it more like, oh, we're doing this thing, we're doing what we need to do, we're doing great, we're building the brand, we're building the company. Oh, and now, oh shoot, there's this category thing we need to figure out. So at what point, you know what I mean, in that, did you realize like category is important, and did you happen into it, or were you like, yes, let's do this category?
I guess for me, I was pretty intentional about it, in part because I knew, again, if you don't have, we wanted to grow huge, right? We wanted to be big. I knew that Tableau could sell enterprise deals. You know what I mean? At the time, we were selling onesie, twosie seats to analysts as a tool, as a personal productivity tool. In fact, sometimes we got bucketed in personal productivity tools, which, you know, maybe is okay for Office, you know, but it ain't, it really isn't, you know, an Adobe, but it really isn't where you want to be, because they kind of leave it to people to buy individually and you sell one or two licenses. And I knew we wanted to be enterprise, and I knew to go enterprise, you've got to be an enterprise piece of software born, raised that way and blessed that way by the analysts, you know? And so part of it was definitely my recognition that, God, if we're going to sell this into the enterprise, analysts have to like it and know what it is and endorse it. And if they don't endorse it, at least recognize us, you know, recognize that this is a bona fide product that does this thing, and they cover their certain categories. And I knew we had to associate with a category in order to get that. So, and also I think, it was clear to me, you know, it was just clear it's just clear coming in that we needed to be in a category or associated with the place where people have a problem, where they gather. The other reason why I like the model of break into a category, break it and break out is, and you mentioned this, Udi, was if you're little, man, you cannot invent your own category. You just don't have the money or the resources. So I knew that was true. I knew we were going to be a different kind of product, but I knew it was also true that we couldn't spend the resources and time and money to build our own category. So that's why I was like, we got to break into one where people are commonly aggregating, analysts, you know, job roles, media, you know, there's people there talking about this problem. We're going to make them talk about it in a different way. So we're going to break in, break it, and break out. And so it was fairly intentional to do that. I think just as a marketer, I kind of believe in the, recent Trout old philosophy of every every customer starts with a position in mind. You don't just form fully, you don't end up in their brain fully formed exactly where you want to be. In a way, you start from somewhere and you have to get them to move to where you want to be. So for me, it was like, okay, where are we starting? What's our journey, you know, to where we want to be. So that's why I sort of gravitated toward an existing category. Let's get associated with that. Let's break it. And then let's break out of it and make it different and change it.
So since I've been starting to just kind of pay attention to this a little bit more, categories seem to be like biological entities almost. You know what I mean? Like they come in, they rise, they fall, different ones come in. It's just like this constantly evolving thing. And that's kind of where I'm at now is like, we're at Metadata associated with the ABM platform category. And when I first took over, I was like, I don't want to be associated with that because in my experience, it's a luxury to have an ABM platform. Like we all have to do ABM because that's the way you market to market. That's the way you market to other businesses as a business. But like, is there really such a thing as an ABM platform? Or did companies come in with great technology, call themselves an ABM platform, and then define ABM for the rest of us? And that's my perspective on it. And I was like, I want to break us out of that. Like we'll have to play an ABM for a while we're small and while we're smaller than these others. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but we're more about demand generation. And we haven't really locked on like what that category would be. Because again, we're small. We don't think we will name it, but we're just, the way I'm starting, I think is probably what you're talking about, Elisa, is trying to break it. Like you guys, ABM is not a platform. In fact, hint, hint, we actually might have a campaign that talks about that next year. It's like ABM is not a platform. ABM is a way you market to other businesses. So I find it kind of interesting, what you said, because I think that may be what I'm doing unknowingly, but realizing like, I don't really want to be associated with that. That's who we're always in like the ABM reports and on G2, like with ABM. It's like, that's okay for now, but ultimately like I want to be different. And so maybe that's what I'm doing. I don't know.
Well, that's one thing I love about MarTech, and I love MarTech. I love marketing technology and Gong included and Metadata.io is, man, and 4 years ago, God, and 10 years ago, what you could only imagine the possibilities. And now, dang, man, you can do these things for realsy and beyond. That's what I love. I mean, Gong, who knew? Metadata.io, who knew? We could do that stuff. So ABM is a pretty new concept as a unified concept. I mean, people were doing ABM tactics separately, unintentionally probably, or intentionally, but disconnected. So I hear you. There's so many new categories coming out of MarTech. I mean, Gong and you guys are both like, well, ABM.
It's hard to follow them sometimes.
Yeah.
There's so many categories. Yeah.
But
it's good, like, because we need them, right? Because there's so many of these technologies out there. Like we need categories so that we know how to compete. We know who we're competing with.
Well, and the buyer needs categories because, man, there's so many vendors out there. It's hard to keep track of who does what and why and how do you differ from that guy and this guy and give it to me straight. That's the other thing I think that analysts try to do is try to tell you what they do rather than what they espouse in a soft baloney-ish kind of way. And I think that's great. I think both of you guys are straight about it, but there's a lot of vendors are like, okay, tell me again what you do, because that didn't make any sense.
Yeah. Let's talk about, okay, so we're, you guys are both, you're in it, you're in the middle of it, things are happening, things are moving, you realize, okay, we're doing this category thing. So like, was there a time or an event, maybe, or something that happened where you're just like, okay, we're actually creating this category here? Was there something that precipitated that? that you remember even? You know what I mean? Elisa, maybe we'll go with you.
I mean, when I came in, I think I'd always been a data user and I always was aware of it. So to me, I knew there was this category already. And again, that's why, like, as I mentioned, and Udi mentioned too, it was like an revolution kind of a thing. So, I do remember saying to people, we have to subscribe to some of these analysts, because in the world of business intelligence, it's an IT dominated thing. And so you need their help. And I remember people and it was a lot of money relative to our budget, relatively speaking. And I remember people on the exec team thinking, what? Are you nuts, man? No, we're not going to be eligible for a category for like another year or even a year and a half or two. And I'm like, exactly. That's why we got to start, talking to them now, because it's going to take time. And let me tell you something, the days, I don't even think they're doing this anymore, when they would take briefings from vendors who weren't their clients. Oh my God, they would practically be snoring on the phone. You could practically hear them snoring. No criticism of any one or firm or one set of
that's okay.
Seriously. They're sitting at the desk, listening to conference calls from firms who are probably going to be out of business in 5 weeks. Like, seriously. But when you pay them, you're a customer, man. They have to listen to you. They have to hear your questions. You might not be paying them to write something nice about you, but you're definitely paying for mind share or a little bit of their time, and it's worth doing. But I remember I remember being in an executive team meeting, people looking at my marketing budget going, Elisa, really? God, that's a lot of money for that. And I was like, I'm not like one of these analyst lover types, but I'm just telling you, we got to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know, Udi, do what about for you guys? Did you sort of go through that sort of, or something much different? Because you invented a category, really, straight up.
We did. And, Anthony Canada, who was the CMO of Gainsight, he wrote a book about category creation, and he talks about it frequently. He's now at Front. And he has a great sentence in his book. And when he talks about categories, he said, don't wait for the analysts to define your category. They will show up after you've already built it, and they will describe it for the rest of the world. And I think that's a great sort of eye-opening way of looking at it. If you're in your early days of marketing for a company breaking out into a new category, creating it or breaking it, don't expect the analysts to be the first to show up and say, yes, what he said, they're creating a new category. That's never happened, and it's not going to happen. They are going to describe it last, after you've got 1,000 customers there. And so I think we need to be very realistic about the expectations we have from analysts. Yeah. Without naming names, the leading analyst firm in the world was chasing me for 3 years at Gong before I became a paying customer. And I'm like, we're going to become paying customers at some point. I've been their paying customer at previous companies, but my marketing budget was tiny in the first few years. And I'm like, I'm measured on demand gen right now. And what you may or may not write about me in 18 to 24 months, I'm not going to see that paycheck this year. You're going to have to wait. And after 3 years, and it was exactly the year where we knew that we needed a new category, that's when we became a paying customer. And now we've got paying relationships with several of the leading analyst firms. And I think at this point, they want to hear from us as much as we want to talk to them.
Yeah.
So I would wait. Like, sorry, analyst friends, like, I know this is not like great for your income, but this is not the first thing that most companies should be spending on, unless you're like in specific niches like security and other areas where you're selling to niches within IT that do go to the analysts first before making like big purchasing decisions. You might want to consider those relationships early. But if you're selling to the business, like I think Tableau was and like Gong is, analysts are not going to be your savior, not on day one, and only much, much later.
Yeah, I agree. And if the other thing I've noticed in talking to a lot of clients I advise and sit on the boards of, if you don't have a definite category that you recognize, like you belong in, and they're not doing regular writing or a quadrant or a wave or what have you about it, then you do not need to subscribe. I 100% agree. For us, we had this category. It was long established. We knew we wanted to break that one. We knew it was, okay, we got to start breaking it. But you're right. Even though we subscribed, there was a bunch, it took them a long time to see the world the way we saw the world. And so they would write things that we were just like, ugh, God, really? Is that what you're writing? It really frustrated us at times. But eventually they get it. But if you don't have like I know a couple of companies where I'm like, I don't know, man, there's not a defined category yet. They don't have a quadrant. They don't have a this, they don't have a that, whatever, the apparatus of a category to break. Don't invest. I 100% agree with you, Udi, on that one. If we hadn't had a defined category to break, I wouldn't have subscribed, because they can't, and they'll wait around, like you said, to define it. Maybe they'll use some of your input and you'll help shape it, but it's going to be a long ride.
They are paid to play it safe. They
are paid to play it safe.
The old 80s saying of no one got fired for buying an IBM, that's exactly the world that we live in. They want to show you who the IBM of the year is, so you play it safe and you don't get fired. And
that's exactly right.
There's very rarely a case where a young, fast-growing startup is going to be up there in the leaders quadrant. It just doesn't happen. You've got to wait. You've got to actually bring the market traction, and then go show and tell to the analysts so they recognize it. It won't work the other way around.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a good really I'll call it a learning experience with this here about 8 months ago when I first took over here. Is Forrester invited us to participate in a review. It was like what do they call it? A new wave. So it wasn't like a full wave, new wave of ABM platforms. So I'm like, oh, yes, shit, we got invited. Like, let's do this, My first time in, didn't have a lot of experience around me. So we're just taking so much time to fill out the questionnaire, meet with the analyst. I think he's feeling me. You know, I'm like, oh, he's feeling me. He understands why I'm like, you know, ABM platform isn't a real thing, but you know, we're still here. 14 out of 14 is where we showed up. It's like, oh no, oh no. But you know, we were able to then kind of use that almost to kind of pivot us away from it. So we also like, we were already thinking of it before that, but that was another kind of like, okay, maybe we actually are onto something that, you know, we're not trying to really compete with ABM platforms, even though we kind of have to right now, but it was a learning experience.
But Jason, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I was going to say the same thing.
You're in the list of the only 14 startups that were covered.
Yes,
exactly. And that is where I took it. I was like, I felt good about that part. Yes.
What it feel to be in your position.
Totally.
You know, it happens to us when we're like named number 2 on something. We're like, oh, darn, what are these idiots missing? But then we're like, yeah, but it's only a list of like 10 companies out of the whole world. So we're okay. But
to be on the list is often an inclusion list. If you don't make their list.
Yeah, whatever. I was excited to be on the list. I was excited about that.
Yeah.
I was disappointed with how we showed up, but you know, it was okay. It was okay. So Udi, what about you? Was there like a time where, I mean, it sounds like you were super intentional about it, but was there a time, I'm sure there was, where you were like, okay, this is like catching on, you know, or do you remember, like, was there a feeling, or was it really just like,
here's like one testament, I think that's interesting. So last October, we did our first inaugural industry event. Back then we called it the Revenue Success Summit, because we actually had to put something on the calendar even before we picked out a name for the category. So that was the Revenue Success Summit. And it was our first event. It was kind of humble. We had like 500 people show up at SF Jazz in San Francisco. And then in February, we decided to take it on the road. And by then it turned to the Revenue Intelligence Summit. We took it to New York, Boston, Chicago, Toronto, and we had hundreds of people show up at each event. It was amazing. And just as we were about to take it on the road again in April to other states, COVID hit, of course. And within 2 weeks, we pivoted to a virtual event. So we had our first virtual event in April, and 2,000 people signed up. And then we did the second one in July, and 4,500 people signed up. And we did our last one this year in October, and 6,500 people signed up for that one. And we're like, okay, this is catching on. This is 6,500 people who signed up for the Revenue Intelligence Summit. It is not the Gong conference. If you look at if you go to celebrate.gong.io, you'll see how we think about the branding of this. It's all about revenue intelligence. The branding was specifically commissioned to look different from Gong's branding. It does not look like the Gong website. It doesn't even have our colors on it. And way at the bottom, there's a monochrome Gong logo saying this conference brought to you by Gong. So we're taking the back seat. We are the facilitator of this thing. We're bringing speakers that don't talk necessarily about Gong. Of course, there's the odd customer or two on a panel that will mention us, but we bring world-class speakers. We had Chris Voss at one of the last ones talking about negotiation. We had Ariana Huffington talk about her experiences of getting through rejections and building her amazing enterprise. And we had Kim Scott talking about radical candor. We have amazing speakers like that. And the industry is flocking, and all of this is under the wings of revenue intelligence on how the best revenue teams in the world are using data to run their teams better. And so this is how the idea is sinking in, you know, event by event, blog post by blog post, press release by press release, case study after case study. We're making this a reality. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, so I can't remember who I heard this. I think it was Mark Organ. I was talking to him the other day. He founded Eloqua. So I was like, he's on my short list. He happens to be an investor in Metadata, so I get to talk to him. He was talking about promoting the category. And so Udi, it sounds like you're actually doing that as well. So it's not just promoting Gong in this category, but it's like, we're actually supporting the category itself. And and I'm guessing it's like rising tide floats all boats, right? So if like this category does well and we're the leaders in it, that's good for us.
Absolutely. I've got to tell you a great story that, you know, when someone asked me, put me on the spot a few months ago and asked me, what's the best category building story you can think of? The first story I came with was not out of tech at all. It's, has anyone not heard the campaign Diamonds Are Forever? That is the best category building play that I know of. It's of course, and does anyone know which company actually paid for that campaign?
I'm going to say De Beers.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Jason. You're right.
Okay,
So,
nice.
way back in the 50s.
I don't know why I know that.
No,
Yeah,
that's
me
Not a
too,
diamond.
me too.
I'm not a diamond guy.
But your wife is. That's what's the thing.
there you go. So way back in the 50s, De Beers, they went to their Madison Avenue ad agency, JWT in New York, and said, "Look, we're sitting on this huge pile of diamonds in our warehouses. We need to get them moving. You need to come up with something." And JWT came up with the now immortal campaign, "Diamonds Are Forever." And the amazing thing about it is that they did not mention the brand name De Beers in it. They weren't even in the commercials. They weren't on the print ads. Why? Because De Beers at that time owned 80% of the world's diamond inventory. And they were like, just like you said, Jason, let's promote the category. By default, we're the winner. I don't care if everyone else also gets more business. We own 80% of it. I just want to make the pie bigger. And that is the exact position that Gong is taking. The last thing I'll say about this is that, and few companies sort of get this right, it's easier to get your audience to agree on a common problem that needs to be solved than on the solution that they will use to solve that problem. Because once you're pitching your solution, you're now selling.
Yep.
When you're consulting and getting everyone to agree that we all want more out of CRM, we cannot continue to rely on manual data entry to understand what's happening in our business, everyone's nodding and agreeing with you. Good.
Yeah.
By the way, revenue intelligence is how you solve that. Now go pick the leading solution in the market to do that. Yeah. That is Gong's marketing.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I always have thought of categories as like common problems. That's what that is. If you think of a category as what's the problem we're solving, not what's the set of solutions we should be up against, but what's the problem, that's really how categories come together. And it's people who have this problem who start to congregate together. The analysts, the customers, the stories, the vendors, just they start coming together and they're like, what are we doing about this problem? And they spend money on problems. They spend money on problems, right? Yes. I spend money to solve a problem. I don't spend money to buy a solution. I spend money to solve a problem. And then by buying a solution.
Nobody wakes up in the morning wishing they had a new drill, but they do need a hole in the wall. So once you help them solve that.
Yes, exactly. It's all about the problem. So that's why when you're defining your category, it's like find where that problem is being discussed, the people are, and it must be because you got to have a market, and a big market with a big total addressable market where there's common people trying to solve this problem, talking about this problem that's a great category.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of, I think, sort of executive maturity to go that route, because the intuitive thing for most of us is just scream, I'm the best, you've got to buy me, just please buy me, I'm the best, you've got to buy me. But and then spending your dollars. Imagine the boldness of De Beers, like spending millions on advertising campaigns without the brand name on them. That's incredible.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
I haven't gone quite that far. You will find the Gong logo on our campaigns, but you will find our slogan, which is now goodbye opinions, hello reality, revenue intelligence by Gong. Gong is the smallest type on that ad and poster and billboards and everything I do. It's not about Gong. It's about revenue intelligence and solving that problem.
Udi, when you guys came out with that, were you the first ones to use that category name?
We did find, I think it's either one or two companies that do something very different from Gong that also use the words revenue intelligence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On their website. Yeah. And we're like, okay, we can live with this. We did a cursory trademark search. We trademarked what we could and what we needed to. And you were looking for, clues that it's working. In the last 12 months, I can name at least 3 companies much closer to what we're doing that have now the words revenue intelligence plastered.
That's where I was going to go next. Yeah. Like, have you seen others now adopt that category name?
Odds, right?
That's a good thing.
Yep. Elisa, what, in terms of like, what role did competition play? You know what I mean? So like because you need competition, right, in the category.
Yeah.
So
it did actually play a pretty important role. And I have to give a lot of credit to 2 other firms that were in the same sort of headspace a little bit as Tableau, which was ClickTech, and a company called Spotfire. And oh my gosh, Spotfire got bought about a few months or 6 months after I joined, and I was like, oh yay, when you get bought, man, that just kind of puts everything you do on hold for 2 years. So goodbye, Spotfire. That was sort of my thinking. But ClickTech was definitely a formidable competitor, especially in our early years. And they were there. They were there also doing the same kind of thing, trying to break the category, but they were kind of staying in the confines of a pretty technical solution for IT, or not just for IT, but trying to bring it to the masses, but a little more traditional. And so I think Tableau we just went all in. I mean, in a way, it was so freeing. And I don't know for you guys at Gong, if you have this, like the old story about Hertz and Avis. When you're number two, you try harder. You have less to risk. You can just play this game. You just go out there because you got a lot. Every time Click when I'd look at their website and I'd be like, oh my God, it's so good. Or, this is so, they were ahead of us for many years. And so it was just like, God, we got to push hard. We got to we got to do it more. We got to say it more. We got to be out there more strongly about what we're breaking and how we're changing, and we're democratizing data and bringing it to the people. We just have to go all the way in on that. And, and because we're willing to take risks. So there was, these two competitors, but particularly Click, that really also helped sort of carve this space out there. But I think we're so focused on the mission of democratizing data and bringing it to everyone and bringing it to people and doing it in a pretty different way. Our route to market was pretty different. And I think that gave us a lot of energy that helped us. But Click, they did great marketing, and they were a great competitor, and it's a good thing to have great competitors. Is a good thing. Yeah. I don't know about for you, Udi. Do you guys, do you look at some out there and go, or, ooh, these guys make us better?
How do I do this in a way that is not condescending and does not put anyone down? I'm not sure I found a way yet. First, I'll start with, I of course agree with you, Elissa, and Jason, you said this, you need competition. A very big warning sign is if you do not have competition. If you're the only one who sees the light and the need, you're probably not in the right room. So we love having competition, and especially in the last couple of years, like probably every month we see a new company that's somehow in our space pop up from somewhere. And it's not just the US anymore. There's European and companies in other spaces that are popping up, which is amazing. I love this. And when someone gets down because like, oh shoot, they're copying us now and they're trying to eat some of our pie, I'm like, here's how I think about it. We just got more marketing budget because everything they're spending is promoting revenue intelligence. And since 8 out of 10 customers buy Gong, if they're in the category, 8 out of 10 buy Gong, I'm enjoying their marketing budget. They're doing all the top of the funnel marketing for me. And all I need to do is show that Gong is better at the bottom of the funnel. And we do that really well. So I love having competitors. You said when you're like the contender, you can risk more and you have a little to lose. Well, also when you're the leader, the clear leader of the category, you have a lot to lose. Yeah. And it's just a different challenge. It's a fun challenge. Let's not lie about this. Everybody wants to be the leader of their category. It's still a challenge. There's never an easy day. And it's just different sets of challenges. As we grow bigger, I do get more scrutinizing eyes from my board, my CFO, my CRO. Like, you just did this like off-color joke in a commercial. Is that really like the kind of company?
That's true. I lived through that too. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, I know, Lisa, you had some fun ones. I know, just from being there, like it was great. And Udi, I love a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing too. And thanks so much again for your time today. Thanks so much for participating with me. Again, everybody, thanks for listening. You guys have a great holiday.
So happy holidays. Cheers.
Happy holidays, everyone. Really enjoy this.
Me too.
Take care.
Thanks again for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed today's discussion and will tune in again. Find all of the B2B Category Creators episodes at Metadata.io. And if you have any feedback, topics, or would like to be a guest on the show, please reach out.